Hi, Debbie.
Hi. Is that
How you doing?
I'm fine. Is that you, BJ?
That is me.
I am
Hello.
I am so happy to be talking to you about Studio 666.
I'm happy to talk with you about Studio 666. It was a good time, yeah?
I had so much fun watching this film. Oh my god.
That's awesome. That's exactly what I'm hoping for everybody to say when they see it.
And Dave Grohl is so affable and amiable and such an everyday guy in here. And when you see him play a demonic, because we all know this has demonic influences, so, and he just effortlessly can make a switch like that, but still retain that everyday charm.
Right? You kind of love them no matter what, right?
It's impossible not to. It just blew me away. I didn't know what to expect with this, but just beyond fun. And I've got it. My God, your kills, your VFX, your practical, because so much of that I know was done practically.
Yeah, that was the main thing we wanted to make sure we captured, that when we were going to do this movie, it wasn't going to go like a full CG thing. And, that's always been my thing with anything I've ever directed, is I always try to keep it as practical as possible. And I'm not opposed to CG, like, peppered in there a little bit. I think it's great, and it does help enhance. But there's nothing like actually seeing like a real prop or a real, sculpt of a person built, and the things that happen with that. I mean, look at The Thing, the original John Carpenter's The Thing. How cool is that stuff?
Yep. But that struck me immediately was the practical effects that were done. And yes, you've got some really cool enhancements in there, with black smoke infiltrating, and it actually looks more like congealed black ash, not a wispy smoke. So you even up the ante with that. And
I wanted to give them a lot of character, which, and that's and there were real people in real suits out there, and the people you're talking about.
Yes, the basement scene.
Yeah.
It just, on every level, it fun. You see the effort and the craftsmanship that went into this, and dare I even say, you put the same kind of craftsmanship, you and your team, into this film that Dave Grohl and the Foo Fighters put into their music. You didn't settle for second best.
Exactly. And I mean, if you're going to go full bore with a movie like this, with such a crazy concept, you have to go as hardcore and as best as you can with this. I mean, I wouldn't cheapen anything out anyways, anything I ever did. And it was just like, if Dave wants to make this movie, we're going to make this movie. We're going to go as big as possible, and just make it look as big as possible with the right people, the cast and crew and everyone involved. A lot of it was a lot of friends and a lot of people together that already knew each other from the film business, that we've all worked together. And it was a big, just happy family when we were making this movie. Nobody wanted the filming to stop because we had such a good time. Everybody's laughing. Everybody's having a great time on it. So that's another thing I was very proud of, was that everybody came up to me and said, I had such a good time making this movie.
I'm curious about your, number one, how did this even come your way, BJ?
So, two producers that I've worked with in the past, and we've been trying to get some other things going. Also work with Dave. It's Jim Rhoda and John Ramsey, and they did Sound City and a lot of the documentary stuff that Dave did. They usually do a lot of the visual stuff that Dave wants to do with music videos and things like that. Dave approached them about this movie, about wanting to do a horror film, and he, being that he was in his house, he kind of got inspired to write this kind of like just a smaller pitch about what he thought would be cool to do. They sent me the pitch, because Dave was looking for a director to do it. And I saw his pitch. I wrote out, a whole lookbook of things I thought would be really cool to incorporate with that, to add to basically more, to just give a little bit more to the story that he was coming up with. And then we had a meeting and talked about it, we're talking about, movies we love, directors we love, the look and feel of the vibe of the film. And from then on, Dave was like, let's do this. And that was basically it. And then we started accumulating all the key players.
Well, you got some great key players here. I mean, Michael Barton, your production designer, especially with with the basement and with the quote unquote side or back door and that alley that leads to it, and that with all the trees and the branches, it is stunning. But then you bring in the work of Michael De La Torre and Eric Leach, your DPs, and the lighting is so, it is pristine. It is so perfect. You get the creepy, inky, bluish black, denatured sense as you're coming in to the basement area. But then you get that golden touch of like an Edison electric light in the basement that really picks up on blood and skin textures. And it is visually stunning, BJ.
Well, and to add on to that, the hardest thing I think that I've learned in making a movie that's in one location is keeping one location interesting. That's one of the hardest things because because you're seeing so much of the same areas in the house, and you always have to kind of change her to make certain things look a little bit different. So like you go into the room or the practice room, even in there, if you watch the movie, you'll see in different scenes at different times of the day, you'll see different lights,
Mm-hmm.
a different texture in the lights during different times of the day and different scenes. And then you want to go into the basement, it's a whole other realm. Then you go outside, it's a whole other realm. You got to keep everything so visually interesting because a one location shoot is really hard to keep people's attention, as like the setting pieces, I'm saying, not so much the actors or anything like that, but just the set pieces alone, it's got to be visual.
Yeah, it's so tricky when you're in one location. But you guys really nail this. And
we're proud of that.
it's like the kitchen scenes are just hilarious when you see the kitchen at the beginning.
Oh, yeah.
And then we see the mess. And we see layers of mess as it happens. You've got the running jokes in here where you make the most out of ranch dressing on to-go food orders.
Ranch.
But what you also do is you actually go 360 with the camera in many instances. And that is a rarity. Not too many directors are that brave to go 360 because you always want your one wall, you basically can get 3/4 of a room, but not 360. You break that, you take us 360, and then you punctuate that with great sound and, of course, music background. And it works beautifully.
I learned a long time ago that you don't always have to follow a rule of the line of which way the camera's got to be, and I think it's always good to be able to break that. I think as long as you know what you're doing in that world, and I am also a camera operator. I've been doing this for over 2 decades, so I've kind of learned that over time with different people I've worked with of ways that you can actually break that mold, and I think it's more visually interesting, because once people have seen an area, they kind of know where they are. It's okay, the eye lines matter. You have to make sure that works, but it's okay to go 360 with the camera. And going back to sound is a huge part of making horror films. You gotta have good sound design. You gotta know what you're doing. You gotta make sure you're gonna plug in the scares or the high pitched screams in the right spots, because you want to get people to have chills. You want the hair on your arms to raise, and all that's very important.
I'm curious because you are so adept at camera operation. I mean, that has been your bread and butter for decades. And you are so damn good with handling a camera. I'm surprised you didn't do this yourself. I'm surprised that you went out and brought in other cinematographers. But having said that, does your work with the camera and this kind of film, did it lead you to work with Michael and Eric in storyboard or shot list? Because obviously your visual eye is really important in this film.
Anything I do, I try to pre-plan as best as possible. And me and Mike De La Torre, we at the very beginning, I got to say, working with him with his planning and the way he would schedule things and what lights he needed and what equipment we're going to use was very vital to that. I loved that whole thing. And I did do a lot of storyboarding with a storyboard artist, and we would walk around the house and I'd show him angles that I wanted to do. When we came back from pandemic, because Mike shot pre-pandemic, Eric shot post-pandemic, or, well, when we all got to come back, we're still in a pandemic. You know, the greatest thing with him is that I worked on a bunch of Slayer videos with him, and I've known him since we were grips together, like when we first started in the film business, and we've been friends ever since. So we have a good working relationship that way. And so, you know, like we know what we want to do, and like he knows if I start to tense up about something, he knows I'm, you know, not really digging on that. And I also will show him. I love using finders, you know, director's finders to kind of like pre-plan the shots. You know, it's all planned out. I don't like going into anything we don't have a plan.
Mm-hmm. Talk to me about color, because color, a lot of people may not notice, but the color, your color palette here is very key, very important. And it is very distinct in setting off different rooms, but of course in crafting that basement. What were your thoughts towards a color palette here?
We wanted it to feel warm and inviting when Dave came in. You know, I mean, it was cold as he comes down into the basement, but when those lights come on, it's kind of inviting. Obviously, things aren't very inviting when he finally gets in there and sees what's going on. And obviously, when everything gets crazy and everything shifts to red, it's just the old school, you know, Storaro red that we all love to see. Like, you know, Apocalypse Now, you know, the important red colors in that, you know, and, you know, Dario Argento, you know, like that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Red is very key. And I knew we wanted to make a, you know, when we knew in the script that that the bulbs were going to fill with blood and do what they were going to do, we wanted to make sure that we could get that feel, at least in this part of the movie. And then once bad stuff happens and things click, it goes to cold again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just love the color. I love your use of color in crafting that emotional visual tonal bandwidth. It really plays so well. Obviously, it's a horror film. We've got bloodshed. We've got kills. You have some of the coolest kills in this film.
Thank you. It's hard to come up with different stuff.
I know, as I'm watching it and I'm going, oh wow, that's really good. And got a buzzsaw in one, but the way that, and obviously that's a CG shot, but
which one?
The buzzsaw one that comes up through the bed.
That's real blood. That was I mean fake blood, but like that's all that stuff.
Uh-huh.
That was massive gallons of blood.
Well, I knew the blood was practically done, but the actual slice and dice itself, and you hold the camera, the shot holds long and, you know, momentarily before we see the two halves fall away.
Yeah.
And
that was actually a build of Rami that we had split.
Oh,
and wow. I mean, that was like a full-on, like, that was a full build of him, and it was split down the middle, and we had to, and obviously we had to, you know, cover up the scene with CG when we first shot that, but no, that whole thing all of that was practical. Everything in that scene was practical.
Oh my God.
When I told the guys what I wanted to do, I said I really want to try to beat that scene in Nightmare on Elm Street with Johnny Depp. That was my goal.
Oh, Jesus.
I don't know if I beat it, because that's a really cool scene and it's iconic, but that was my goal.
I love this one. I got to tell you.
It's awesome.
But it's the way it holds. That for me, because you've seen slice and dice stuff before, and okay, things get sliced and diced and just fall away, drop to the ground, go clunk. But this, it holds like it suspended animation almost.
Yeah. Well, we all knew that it was going to be like totally physically impossible, but we just thought it was hilarious that it just kind of held there, like it was almost like a super clean cut. And then you had to have that moment at the very end. And that was the payoff, is seeing that at the end.
All of these different kills and the manners that things are being done. Symbols get employed, which is really cool too. The imagination that you have, your visual imagination and acumen is just, you really get to showcase that with this film. You really do, BJ.
I'm pretty proud of the things that we all accomplished on this, you know, and it was all group effort, you know. Like I always say, you're only as good as the crew you surround yourself with. And without the people that I got to be with, without the makeup artists, you know, the wardrobe, the DPs, grips, electrics, you know, special effects, you're only as good as that and as good as your planning. And to that, you know, it brings everything to life. And when you successfully get it done, in, you did a good job with it.
Well, your makeup prosthetics are amazing.
Yeah, they're pretty great. It's Tony Gardner and Alterian and all his people, and my wife is also a makeup artist. She was also part of that. She worked with Tony a lot. So it's just again, it's all friends. It's all people that like come up together and work together. Like me and Tony and my wife and everybody and Eric, the DP. We all did a bunch of Slayer music videos together, and everything in that video with all the gore and the blood in that is straight up same family.
Wow. One last question for you then, BJ.
Okay.
With every project, you learn something new. You've got a skill set or takeaway. As a director, what did you learn about yourself making Studio 666 that you can take forward and implement in future productions?
It's funny because on other things that I've worked on, I always did the Steadicam stuff, and this might be like the lamest answer ever, and I'm sorry, but I realized that for me, I can't be the operator on these shows. I'm so much better letting someone else create those shots where I can actually talk to them and have someone else do it, because I want to focus on performances, and that's what I did on this one. I didn't really operate anything on this, and I just love the fact that I got to collaborate with the operators and the DP on those kind of on all the shots and watch them do their magic while I was getting the performance from the actors that I needed.
Well, you made the right choice, BJ, because you got great performances, and not just from Dave and the Foo Fighters, but Garland, Leslie Grossman, Will's hilarious, Jenna Ortega. I mean, just all around, this is one hell of a good time watching this film. I love it. I just love it, BJ.
Thank you very much.
And I hope I get to talk to you again in the future on another project.
I'm trying to get it going. Let's do it.
Oh, BJ, thank you so much. And you have a great rest of your day and week.
You too. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.